Welcome to the Bizfranhub podcast. Today, joining me, special guest Michael Reeder, CPA. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, John. Hi, everyone. Bizfranhub Nation. Great to see you all, John. It's a pleasure to be here, man. It's been long overdue. I'm so grateful to be a guest on your podcast.
Oh, it is a pleasure to have you here today. I'm really excited, and we all know that it's been a really interesting time, and everything going on now, being top of people's mind, starting their own business. And it's exciting to see so many people taking that next step. And it's just something that obviously everybody needs to learn more about, and they don't teach in school. And so giving them franchises and showing them different steps of starting their business. One of the questions I know I get all the time is, when should they get their LLC or business entity set up? And I wanted to see, maybe you could touch on that topic a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all of you that don't know me, my name is Michael Reeder. I'm a CPA with a niche in the franchise industry and working with business buyers. I work with business buyers and franchisees all across the country as their CPA. And I have a nationwide network of franchise professionals like John that refer me their prospective business buyers. And so really, John, your question, it's the sooner the better. But it really makes more sense when they're more when you as the consultant have determined that you're working with a serious buyer, as opposed to as we call in the industry, a tire kicker. And when they're getting to the point where they are going, it's just they're getting very close to signing the franchise agreement, and now it's just a matter of entity structure and funding. When it's closer towards, when it's closer to actual buying, when it's closer to actually them buying the business, as opposed to the very beginning. Because if you're talking to someone at the very, very beginning, sometimes, when way too much information can be overwhelming at first. And so it's really it's better to talk. So you want to wait. So I've found working with buyers as the CPA, that we're having this conversation at that sweet spot is when they're about 75% through the life cycle of working with you, the consultant. But they haven't decided on what type of event, they know they're going to go with brand X or brand Z or brand Y, but they haven't signed the franchise agreement. And they also are not sure what entity structure to go and what funding strategy to go. That's the good time. I would say 75 to 80% of the point, when they're 75 to 80% of along the process, is a good time to bring me into the picture, to have a complimentary CPA consultation call with them to discuss topics like entity structure and funding and accounting and tax and financial projections, things that the average buyer may be very green with, they're not comfortable, this is not their specialty. And it's also not your specialty as the franchise consultant. You're a franchise consultant, I'm the CPA. And instead of, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And I know that it definitely depends what funding they're going with, right? Because if they're doing something with the 401, they would have to be, that C corporation in that sense.
Absolutely. And the entity structure strategy and funding strategy are the most commonly discussed topics that I have with buyers on the complimentary CPA consultation calls. So really, all of these buyers, regardless of what brand they're going in, there's so many factors that, forget about the franchise consultant, even the funding company, the people that the buyers are talking to at the funding companies, they don't know about the accounting and tax implications of the entity structure and the funding strategy. And what's the most popular phrase that other professionals love to say? Go talk to your CPA. Go talk to your CPA. And so the problem, and so the problem that I'm solving in the industry with my process of the complimentary CPA consultation call that I offer to prospective buyers, is I provide a better solution to you, the franchise consultant, and your buyer client, than the status quo of go talk to your CPA, because John, you're a seasoned franchise consultant professional. You've been doing this for years. God, you got to be getting on to like close to like your 10-year anniversary, right, brother? Like
it's getting close.
Time flies, man. But the CPA is one of those handful of avatars, right? Like the CPA, the financial advisor, the spouse, that family member or friend that has the ear of the buyer, that has the reputation in the industry as a deal killer or blowing up the deal. And the CPA is definitely one of them. And so like when you as the consultant, like when you say go talk to your CPA, then all of a sudden the CPA is going to come in, and most CPAs are not entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneurial CPA. I'm a business owner myself. I'm not just a CPA on the payroll of like my boss CPA. Like I own the CPA that hired me out of college. I'm very entrepreneurial as a CPA, and I'm all about business ownership, very pro business. And so, but a lot of other CPAs tend to poo-poo on business ownership. They tend to feel like a lot of CPAs are conservative by nature in terms of like risk. And so, when their client, and of course, if there's like a red flag about any brand, then of course we want to, bring that up. But there's also a lot of centers of influence in your client's ecosystem that are creating red flags out of nowhere. There could be nothing wrong with the brand. The brand can have a strong track record, a strong item 19. You can have strong validation calls, but when you're asking non-business owners for business advice, and the CPA is commonly one of them. The CPA often feels like it's their duty to, poke holes and stuff like this, and then they do it so much, and what they're doing, and they don't even know it most of the time, is they're projecting their own conservative approach to business and lack of risk taking and fear onto the client. And so, what you're getting with me when you say, well, here's this CPA, his firm is based out of Chicago, but he works with clients locally and nationwide with a niche and franchise and working with business buyers. He'll give you 60 minutes of his time to have a complimentary call to answer anything that you want to talk about in the context of accounting, tax, entity structure, funding, financial projections, resale, financial statement due diligence, items 7, 19, and 21 of the FDD as it pertains to your prospective business purchase, Mr. or Mrs. Client. And hey, if you want to work with him, me in a paid context, then that's between you and him. And so, it's just, how can you turn down an offer for free advice from a CPA who eats and drinks and breathes this stuff 7 days a week, 365 days a year, so it's like working with, like getting me involved as a CPA that knows this stuff is much more to your advantage as the buyer and to your advantage as the franchise consultant, compared to saying, go talk to your CPA. And then to touch on what you said, John, the Rob C Corp is a very prevalent entity structure in this industry, business buyers and franchise, the rollover business startup C Corp, and several CPAs have never heard of it before. Others have very limited understanding, and I'm a CPA that knows the Rob C Corp very in depth. So that's all, like when we're talking about entity structure and funding strategies with clients, the Rob C Corp is always one of the main options, along with like an LLC S Corp and like SBA loan and like home equity line of credit, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And I think most of the candidates, and not all, but they may be first-time business owners, and they might not have a CPA that they're used to talking to. And I'd love to hear your take on, as we go into this great resignation, more people are leaving the workforce and wanting to go off on their own. What do you think should push them over the edge to know about, now that they've become a business owner? And, what are some of the things you usually highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So much to unpack there. I mean, like, first of all, I'm just like so grateful to be an American. I just want to acknowledge that out there, like shout out to America. Like no matter what's going on, this is the greatest country on earth. And as I'm filming this with you, John, right now, I'm not in America. And so as us Americans, I think that it's great to get out of America every now and then to get perspective of like how truly great America is. So I just want to, say that, like, God bless the USA. And with that being said, with what's going on right now with the great resignation, it was kind of already happening. And with, you want to talk about like big corporations offshoring and like the prevalence of automation and AI, people were already losing their, like, ageism is real, people. Ageism is real. Okay. Like John and I know a lot of people in their 40s and 50s that were cut from their job, and it's not so easy finding another job at the same salary that they were making. And so ageism is real. And so, and what's going on in the market, we know John and I are filming this right now on June 7th, 2022. John, it's your son's birthday today, right? Your son is 1 year old. Oh,
big 1 year old.
Mazel tov. Jesper Pace, happy birthday. Happy 1 year old birthday, little boy. Love you. And when you're watching this sometime in the future, I hope we're making you proud.
Yes.
So like John and I, we're filming this right now on June 7th of 2022. So, if you're watching this, for context, what's going on in the world and the economy, interest rates are going, inflation, and, the stock market's going down, everything that's going on with the Ukraine situation. And so if you're in a situation where you are out of a job, you've got options, right? Like, you're still like, what is that dinner? Like, what's that dinner table conversation with you and your spouse, right? It's, well, do I find you either hate your job that you're currently at and like every day is a struggle in that context, or you just got laid off, right? So like, let's just focus on either of those because if you either got laid off or you want to quit like ASAP. So do you find another job or do you start your own business from scratch? So franchising is that third option that most people are not talking about at the dinner table. What about franchise?
Yep.
And whether it's a startup franchise or a resale franchise, you can also go independent resale. But investing in an already existing business system, whether it is a franchise startup or a franchise resale or an independent resale, that's the third option. First option being a new W-2 job, second option being starting your own business from scratch. That third option, right, like investing in an already existing business system, right, new franchise resale, or independent resale, is that third option that most people at the dinner table are not even considering. And that's what, people like John Pace, one of the most respected franchise consultants in the country, definitely reach out to him. And I don't say that lightly, folks. That's what John does all day, every day with his clients. They're looking at the pros and cons of the different alternatives. And John, I'm sure that you can tell people when people when the first thing that comes to mind when the word franchise comes up is QSR, right? Like Taco Bell, KFC, blah, blah, blah. But there's so much more to it, right? And so you're already when you're already in a situation like to be in America, and if you want to buy a business, the free market economy, it's not easy, right? But if you invest in a franchise, an already existing business, that system has already, the founders of that company, the franchisor, they've already, I don't want to say perfected the business model, but they've established a working business model that's proven itself on the market. They've worked out all of the kinks over the last, X amount, like 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years and stuff. And so when you invest in a franchise, it's a combination of, you're going into business for yourself, but not by yourself. And so, my message to everyone out there that is dealing with this great resignation, whether you are you hate your job that you're at right now and you can't wait to get out, or you just got laid off recently and you're trying to figure out what's next, and you are someone who's dealing with ageism, you thought that it wasn't real because, you learned, and I'm a business owner and there's a lot of value in having, experienced people but I'm a small business owner. I'm not like a multinational, huge conglomerate. And so, but if you're someone like that, who's dealing with that right now, consider the option of becoming your own boss. And with all this uncertainty going into the market, I see a lot of people that want to bet on themselves. And so when you bet on yourself, yes, that often means starting your own business, but there's also the option of investing into an already existing system, like a franchise that you are not, thinking of, you and your spouse are not talking about as much as like a new job or starting your own business from scratch. And you ought to talk to someone like John Pace, a respected franchise consultant, because if there's a place where it's not easy, but if there's a place to do it, it's America. And And so I'm seeing a lot of people within this great resignation just, taking that leap of faith and betting on themselves, because they don't want to. There is no job security anymore in the corporate world. You can be, you can be 10, 20 years in at a place, and at the end of the day, you're just a number. And if the shareholders want a bigger dividend, then you're gone. And so there's no loyalty. And so people don't want to, be victim. I don't want to say victim, but people don't want to be at. They don't want that insecurity of doing everything that they can and then still getting fired, right? And then also the whole prospect of starting your own business from scratch. There's going to be that, you have to not only work it, but also think of the actual business model and get, and so I strive, this is a third option that ought to be. So a combination of investing in an already existing business system like a franchise and doing it in a place like America. This is something that, and bet on yourself. You can sense my passion, John. This is a topic I'm very passionate about, but that's my message to the people in right now in this great resignation. People want to get out, or they hate their job, they're dealing with ageism. And if you're in America, and I don't want to say you can't do it in other places, but I also know people that are in Europe, and the tax codes in America, the tax codes in the EU are crazy. There's so much opportunity, and it's much more than just getting another job or starting your own business from scratch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as you just mentioned, a proven business system for profitability, I think, is key. And knowing what that profitability potential looks like before going into the business is one of the biggest advantages franchising has to offer. You can see it, feel it, touch it, talk to other existing operators, know that what was their experience like? What kind of support is the franchise bringing? And I know that going from working in corporate America myself and becoming a small business owner, it feels good knowing that you're taking your income after expenses and saving that, where their government's taking 30, 40% of your W-2 income, and you really have very little options there. It's something that I think that people, if they knew that owning your own business and you can write off certain expenses, that it's such a big advantage, and that control that it allows them to be able to choose, where they want to work from. And I think too many people I know were in corporate America. I heard one candidate I was talking to traveled over 280 days out of the year. That's majority of his year he's gone in a way. And so franchising, I think one of the biggest advantages over starting a business from scratch, more power to you if you do it that way, but 4 to 5 years it can take to just build up a profitable system, because you're coming up with everything, the branding, the marketing. Here you have a turnkey system. And scalability is probably the next biggest advantage it has, right alongside access to financing, which when you can get up to 90% of the total investment funded through the Small Business Administration, only here in the US, they'll allow that. And these businesses are pre-qualified if they're on the franchise registry. And that only leaves you to get qualified. They only need little minimum requirements, 680 credit score. Usually they want to see some liquidity to make sure that you can cover your personal expenses. But for somebody that may have been laid off, or they want to make that transition, the power that brings over, having to build it all up from ground zero and bootstrap the whole project, it can mean the difference between getting to profitability in 6 months or 12 months, or, it can really push that timeline forward for someone versus, I've heard of all these different types of situations that have come up in business, and you take on that wrong client and all of a sudden, they may take up all your capacity, and it's just a matter of finding that balance. And the franchise they know how to market and get their customer, right? And it's key in business. And I know you see it every day, but going from a W-2 to being self-employed, what kind of things can they start to take, in terms of expenses? What do you see out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question. The Internal Revenue Code is written for the self-employed. And so even if you are a franchisee of a franchisor and you have to abide by the franchise agreement, you can't just do whatever you want as a franchisee, but that's a good thing, right? Because you didn't sign up for that. You signed up to follow the existing playbook of the franchisor, which is a good thing, which means that you just have to focus on execution and focus less on coming up with all these like ideas, because that's what the franchisor did and you just have to execute it. But still, even if you're a franchisee, you are self-employed. You're still a business owner and you're self-employed in the eyes of the government. And so the Internal Revenue Code is written for the self-employed. And John, to your point, like when you were in corporate previously in your prior life before you got into the franchise world, self-employed, you saw what it was like to get your paycheck once every pay period. And isn't it frustrating? Like now that you look at it, like you look back at it, like back then it was just kind of like, there was a day when I was like an employee on the payroll company, but like, and back it was just kind of like the way it was. But like now that we're self-employed, isn't it, it's just crazy, right? Like you as the employee get your net check, right? And you look at your check stub and you see a gross pay, then all these deductions, right? Like including taxes, federal, and depending on what state you're in, state taxes and income taxes, and then Social Security tax and Medicare tax. And then there's your net pay at the very end, right? So what's going on there, right? You're doing all the work and you're getting paid last, and you can't write off any of your unreimbursed business expenses. I mean, being an employee has some benefit, like there's pros and cons to everything, right? That's what, you're going to work with John going through his franchise consulting process. And when you're working with me, as a CPA, like a big part of what we do is we educate and bring awareness. And a big part of that is pros and cons of everything, right? So, if let's give employee some credit, right? Like there are benefits, you can go to work from like Monday through Friday and like 9 to 5 and just turn your work and like turn the switch off. And depending on the company culture, you might get like, more benefits than others and like benefits in the context of retirement planning and health insurance. But that's not like not every employee situation is like that. Like to John's point earlier, he was giving the example of the one employee that was like traveling for 280 days out of the year. I mean, how many lost memories of spending time with your kids, that you can't get back. And, but, to your point, to your original question, John, when you're self-employed, your taxable income is determined from your gross revenue or your gross income minus your business expenses. And then you arrive at your net income. And depending on how you're structured, that's what's going to be taxed, depending if you're taxed as a C Corp or an S Corp or an LLC or a sole proprietorship, a partnership, et cetera. But it's when you're self-employed, you are bringing in gross income or gross revenue and subtracting from that business expenses and arriving at your net. And then your net, then, let's talk about like an individual, for example, like if you're a sole prop or a partner in a partnership or a S Corp shareholder in an S Corp, that net is flowing through to your individual tax return. And then there's further deductions, right? Like you're either the sum of your itemized deductions or your standard deduction, and then you arrive at taxable income. And so there's, the moral of the story there is that like one of the reasons why we always, because it's true, like one of the reasons why we say that the Internal Revenue Code is written for the self-employed is because taxable income when you're self-employed is determined after business expenses have been deducted off the top from gross income or gross revenue. And that's not the case when you're an employee. When you're an employee, you're ultimately just an expense on your employer's books. And then your expense is picked up as W-2 income on your 1040, on your individual tax return. But what if you incurred out-of-pocket gas and dues and subscriptions and home office and traveling and continuing professional education? And yeah, the good employers out there will, have an expense reimbursement policy. But there are lots that'll just say you're on your own with that and you can't do anything about it. And so that's one of the technical reasons why and then we can go into lifestyle and stuff like that too, right? But like there's an autonomy and control of schedule and spending more time with loved ones and stuff. But like one technical aspect, one of the key technical aspects of why being a business owner, being self-employed is more advantageous than being an employee is because your taxable income is determined after deducting business expenses as opposed to before.
Yes, and it can make a huge difference, and not even getting into other sections of the IRS code like section 179, where they can depreciate large, assets and machinery and equipment that they might be using, and all of those things can flow through and even offset other income, right? Spousal income that might be shared jointly, and other income that they might be bringing in. And so there's a lot that they could do and options as you become a small business owner. And for those out there listening right now, it's something that you might not know a lot about it now. You don't need to become the expert. That's where Michael, myself, we are here to help you plan. And how are you going to be able to transition? For some people, they might do it all at once. Others, it might make sense to keep their full-time job, and they can be more semi-passive and manage a manager. And all of these things combined are going to make up your total income. But there are a lot of options once you have more than just your W-2 income. And so all these different things that starting a business you might not see initially, but if you get into it more, you can start to really see how it is the American dream. And, like Michael is saying, here in the US, we have such an opportunity that I think a lot of people spend their lives and they end up missing it. And myself, I was 28 years old when I started this business. I know Michael was probably about 27, 26 maybe, and he made partner at the CPA firm. And I know between the two of us, we both wish we would have started sooner. And it's something that it's never too late to start though. And the nice part is, even if you feel like you waited, longer, the franchise can give you a head start that you can really be up and running in some of the service type businesses in 30 to 60 days. You finish training, they turn on the advertising and customers start coming in, right? And so, it's always something that you might have questions about. And that's where Michael and I, provide free consultations. Michael is excellent to ask questions about, and I have candidates all the time that if they don't have a current CPA and they don't know where to get started, it's always great to just have that conversation. Everything that we do is exploratory. We want to help you learn, what is franchising? Is there something there to offer? Like Michael mentioned, it's way more than quick service restaurants. I know everybody thinks of the McDonald's and the Chick-fil-A's. There are other businesses out there though that can perform much higher margins. 10 to 15% in the restaurant industry isn't all that exciting, but other businesses with low overhead, not a lot of labor costs, they can achieve margins of 20 to 30%, and so we see people that the businesses that they end up getting into, it might not have been what they initially thought, but moreover, so what the owner's role in the business is going to be. And Michael, would you agree, your employees are your biggest asset in your business, and
100%.
Essentially you build up a team that now you have options. Do you want to take on the role of manager? Do you want to hire somebody to come in and handle those aspects of your business? And something that you would never achieve in a job, right? And in a job, it tends to start off, you might not have as much responsibility, but, more and more time goes on, more responsibility gets added in there, and you really don't have that flexibility. The beauty of the entrepreneur path is, as you build it up one day, you can decide, do you want to delegate? Do you want to take a step back? Do you want to grow, add in a second location, third location? Is it something that you can see yourself, or do you want to diversify? And there's always an option to do that in franchising, because there's thousands of different choices you could get into. Yeah,
John. So John, like we're talking a lot about, about the owner operator, like buyer avatar, which is the very common one. But there's also, going into franchising as an investment diversification strategy that a lot of people are doing. Like, how many people do you see that are going into franchising? They're keeping their day job. They have a portfolio of like 5, 10, 15 real estate assets. And now instead of purchasing real estate asset number 16, 17, and 18, they're going to go and invest in like 1 or 2 territories of like a Phoenix Salons or a My Salon Suite or Salons by JC, for example.
Absolutely. Yes. That, franchising, it has that scalability plus the systems in place where they can have a management agreement, and they can, the example you gave, that one is moreover so a real estate model, but the way that it operates, it can definitely be enough to support a full-time income. And it's just a matter of, what is their goals, right? And it's something that when we look at the investor model, generally it might require a little more capital up front and a slightly longer ramp up, but ultimately you have the power to keep your income currently. And I think that's really powerful for everybody, to be able to continue that and then decide when is the right time to transition, right? And so just one of those things that we have to look at, and does it make sense for their situation? And so, just wrapping up here and keeping time in mind, if you guys have questions, feel free, contact us. You'll see in the notes below where to reach us, schedule an introductory appointment. And any final thoughts, Michael?
Honestly, man, I'm so grateful. Again, you all that know me just know how proud I am to be an American, and I don't mean to overkill that and stuff like that, but it's true. And there's lots of stuff going on in the world right now. But explore these options of business ownership, because they can sound overwhelming. And so what's really been present for me recently, as I talk to different people and stuff like that, and the expression's been used, I've heard a lot of times throughout the last few months, oh, easier said than done, right? But my response to that is, it's easier said than done, but it can be done, right? It's easier said than done, but it can be done. And so if you're at a point in your life where you want to try something new, explore business ownership. It might not be right for you, but explore it, and work with a professional like John, and whenever that accounting and tax and entity structure funding conversation comes into play, I'm a resource. I'm a tool on John's tool belt of resources to have that specific niche conversation of the business buying, business investigation process. But it's easier said than done, but it can be done. And a lot of the skills that you cultivate in the corporate world are great. They translate well to business ownership. I was talking to a gentleman the other day who's going into because I talked to so many people. This gentleman, I think, was going into a painting franchise, and we were talking either painting or a chiropractic franchise. And he was saying how in his current sales position at his corporate job, he manages a team of 30 people. Well, it's like that management skill is going to translate the fact that he can lead a team of 30 people means that he's got leadership qualities. And so that's, so a lot so my final, my closing thoughts are obviously, God bless America, great country, and just explore this world of business ownership. There's a lot more possibilities to it than you might think, and reach out to someone like John and go through his process. Because if you just go to the internet, you're going to get confused. There's so much information out there. You're also going to find yourself on the next day you're going to wake up and you're getting you're on 10 to 15 email blasts that you didn't sign up for, because now these brands are just going to, so there's just so much information out there. Work with a professional who all he does every day is study brands and work through the business buying process, and educating and bringing awareness to this option of franchise business ownership to interested people out there. Reach out to someone like John, and then obviously I'm here as a CPA in this industry. You can reach out to me as well. There's just so much more to this world, and take the time to go through it and learn and get educated about it before you decide what your next step is, if you're looking to, invest in something or to switch your career path, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. Knowledge is power, and a second opinion never hurts. We are here to explore franchising. It is my full-time job to learn about brands, and it's a matter of seeing what's out there and seeing what resonates with you, because a lot of times people, they might put themselves into a box and think, well, I come from food, and so I got to stay in food, or, I've been working in accounting, so I got to stick with that. They could apply those business skills to just about any franchise out there. And we can find something that you can feel passionate about and go out and bring to a community and feel good about it. And I think that that's most important. That's why we try to give more options than most out there. And it makes all the difference, because you only have one time to decide. And it is a very critical decision, but it's something that we try to make it as entertaining as possible. And talking with multiple franchises, I believe anybody that's going to invest in a franchise should have talked to at least 2 or 3 different franchises before making that decision. And we're here to help them do that and help you do that if you desire. And so thank you for joining today. This was a great podcast, a lot of information. If anyone has questions, you'll be able to find our contact information, and tune in again soon.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Everyone.